Welcome to Conversations Live. For more than a decade, we've brought you the best in books, entertainment, celebrity interviews, and current events. When the movers and shakers of the world have something to say to you, they say it to us first. Now celebrating 17 years of broadcasting success, here's your host, Cyrus Webb.
And welcome back, everyone, to Conversations Live. I'm your host, Cyrus Webb. Glad you all could join us once again, both for our radio audience in Mississippi and our online audience tuning in, thanks to our friends at iHeartRadio and Amazon Music Podcast. We're glad you all could be with us as well. I had a great opportunity to watch a great documentary called CLAPBOARD JUNGLE on Amazon Prime. It is one of those amazing things I think that any creative probably would enjoy because it's about, of course, the business side of any industry that you really take part in. The subject of this film and the director also behind it is Justin McConnell. He's making his first appearance on our program to talk to us not only about his journey as a filmmaker, but what it's been like for him to do work that he loves, but also to share the experience, I think, with all of us now through this doc. If you guys have not heard about CLAPBOARD Jungle, of course, we'll let you know how you can be able to see it and stay connected for the updates. Justin, thank you so much for the time. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on.
Hey, glad to do it. So, Justin, I think the great thing about this film, and I'm actually going to write this in my review on Amazon, is that I think any creative, no matter what their industry might be, even my industry or anyone involved in the arts and entertainment, will watch this and be able to really relate to the struggle, right? The passion of doing what you love, but the challenges that come along with it. Has that been one of the things you've been hearing a lot from people, that even people who are not in the film industry, how much they saw a bit of themselves in it?
Yes. I ultimately set out to make a movie that was very zero-focused on the independent film business, but the actual lessons that come from it that aren't specifically about the film business could be applied to any artistic endeavor, I think. So I definitely think people see themselves in the path to make something happen, to generate something from thin air, to climb a ladder in your given business. Whatever specific lessons you might learn may not necessarily apply to what it is that you do, but the idea of the perseverance behind it and the picking yourself back up after you've been knocked down, it very much, in a lot of ways, I structured the documentary kind of like it was a Rocky film. You train and you work for it, you learn, you get better at things, you don't take yourself so seriously that you think you know everything, and you try and improve, and a little bit by little bit by little bit until you get your shot at the title fight, So, and I think that's one of the big lessons to take away from the film is about self-education and really taking a stock and look at yourself and trying to identify where your weaknesses are and working to improve those. I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean you become very good at what you do, but if you don't put in the effort, you're definitely not going to become better at what you do. So that's part of it. And also just the complex moving parts of any given field, specifically artistic fields, but any given field, like if you're completely green and blind to how the actual mechanics of a business operate, then you're flying blind. You're not going to be able to pursue what you want to pursue within the parameters of that business. So I do think there are lessons to be taken away for people outside of film as well.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, and I think our audience will as well. So, Justin, let's go back then to how this began for you. What was it about storytelling through film of any platform you could have chosen? What was it about film that struck you to make you say, this is what I want to do?
Right in the movie, I kind of have like a funny background where I thought I wanted to be a criminologist or a paleontologist, but really I realized I just like Silence of the Lambs and Jurassic Park. I think ultimately what it was for me, because I determined I wanted to be a filmmaker around the age of 15. I was living in a really tiny, small town, and my big escape, the way I saw the rest of the world living in that small town was through renting movies and watching stuff that was made from different places. And, that was how I sort of escaped from the limitations of my world. So when I got old enough to move out of that town and move to Toronto and then start traveling and things like that, I feel like film sort of primed me for that idea of a bigger world and people out there that have different experiences than me. And all that sort of fascinated me. But like, if I'm being entirely honest, it was probably my dad, because we used to rent, probably from an early age, he used to rent me horror movies if I was sick at home, which happened a lot when I was a kid. he'd rent me horror movies sort of without telling my mom and be like, hey, today we're watching Dario Argento's Creepers, or what, one of the earliest ones I think he rented for me was The Monster Squad. And I think from an early age being exposed to, the magic of movies, the creature effects, the things, the fantastical things you can create and put on screen, that sort of endeared me to filmmaking as a career, because I really love storytelling since I was a kid, and I really wanted to embrace that further, and film seemed like a natural way to do it. And then when I started actually making stuff in my teenage years, it was like, yeah, this is fun, I'm doing this. And then it turned into a lifelong obsession, I guess.
Yeah. And I think it's an obsession, again, that creatives can relate to. And, again, this is why I love the way that Clapboard Jungle kind of unfolds then, Justin, because we're able to get an idea of your own journey, but you're also able to share the journey of others who people respect in the industry. What was that like for you to be able to not only to have them be a part of this, to share their experience, but also for you to kind of be inspired by them through it?
Well, I definitely think that the production of this film was like a massive crash course film school for myself to some degree. You can learn a lot by doing, and you can learn a lot from books and bonus features and stuff like that. But, sitting at the feet, a proverbial feet, I was usually in a chair behind the camera, but, sitting and listening to these people that I was interviewing and absorbing their knowledge over time was absolutely an eye-opening experience, and I took a lot away from that. I shot about 120 or 130 interviews for the project, not just for the film. The film itself is a standalone thing that's out right now, but we're also in post-production on an 8-episode educational series that's more talking heads and removes my stories from it. It's based on topics. Each episode is a specific topic. So being able to, talk to people like Guillermo del Toro and George A. Romero and, people I grew up idolizing or enjoying their work or really respecting their career path, and asking them blunt, very direct questions that they probably don't normally get asked, so getting really good answers out of it, because a lot of times when somebody sits down for an interview, it's about the project they're working on, or talk to me about this, but to just candidly ask them a specific filmmaking related questions without making it specifically about their given work, I think they opened up in a way that you don't get too often, and it was very, very there was a lot of knowledge to be gleaned from that, and I'm really thankful for that opportunity in pretty much every case. Everybody who said yes to an interview, I'm still blown away.
Right. Well, Justin, I think the other great thing about this for the viewer, regardless of if they're just watching it for the entertainment value of it or to be inspired themselves by someone who may be in their industry, I think is that the way we're able to do it, we're able to just watch things like this in the comfort of our own home these days, thanks to the digital platforms. How have you benefited from that when it comes to keeping the control? Because I think for a lot of creatives, right, they like to be able to do things the way that they want to get it done. How have you benefited from what's been at your disposal now, I'll say at least for the past 5 years, when it comes to technology, but also the means that you have to go directly to the consumer?
That's a big question. I think it's been a little longer than 5 years. Camera tech's been getting cheap, I'd say, for a decade now, maybe a little more. When I first started out, it was even sort of cheap then compared to what it used to be, say, 10 yeyears before that. But when I was starting out, my first camera package was a DVX 100, which is a standard definition camera, and the big selling point was it's shot in 24p, so you can actually shoot sort of cinematic looking stuff. And that camera pack in the early 2000s, including a tripod and some lights, and the basics, cost me probably 10 or 12 or 13 grand. And this was money I had to borrow and then pay back. It was money, I couldn't afford that when I was younger. So that was a gateway that it was very tough to break through, even for somebody on a independent level, because, it's not that in the grand scheme of things, that's not a ton of money. But it is to somebody, a teenager starting out or a young person in their young 20s. Now you can go out and buy something actually significantly better than what I was using in the early 2000s, and lenses and enough of the kit for under $1,000. Or you could get a really good smartphone and make something that way. I'm not necessarily saying that's the best path, but everything is so democratized now on the production side of things that if you all can afford a smartphone, technically you can make some kind of a film. There's no guarantee it's going to be good. That's up to you and up to the process, and you still have to pass quality control to be able to deliver something, but you can make something. So yeah, it's like something like this documentary. It was literally me buying a cheap amount of camera gear and going, okay, I'm just going to shoot this, and then spending money out of my own pocket to do so. And that's how the movie got made. And I couldn't have done that 10 years ago. There's no way. Or 15 years ago. It's impossible. So it's great that opens up. The side of that, though, the consequence of that, is that because anybody can make a movie now, everybody's making movies, or everybody's making music, or everybody's making, there's so much oversaturation because the gatekeeping isn't necessarily there like it used to be on a cost level or whatnot, which is great. It's great that anybody can do that, but it means that there's now so much more competition for people's eyeballs. So yes, you can absolutely, in distribution now too, put your stuff out there directly. You can, if you are a human being, you can put something up on Amazon Prime right now. If you are you can release it through Vimeo and Vimeo OTT and whatever. You can do that directly without having any distributor buy your movie at this point. But that leads to such a flood of material hitting the marketplace. It's like, how do you get eyeballs? How do you get people to actually watch your movie when it's one of 15,000 that came out last year? That sort of thing makes things really difficult too. So it's great. The democratization of everything is a really good thing. I'm all for it, but it does lead to a scenario where you have more content than eyeballs, and that's cool. The best stuff does rise to the top, but it leaves the remaining 98% of stuff that gets produced may not make its money back, or may not really get seen and doesn't really help you. It's good to produce it. It's good to make it. You should, because it's what leads to your next thing, and you should put all the effort you can into something. But it's just this giant pool of stuff to look at. Like, I guess the best analogy I can give is like, if you've got a Netflix account, you could sit there and scroll endlessly for hours and then decide, oh, okay, well, I've got 400 choices now. What do I want to watch? And then not watch anything because you've just wasted all your time scrolling. So it's it's very much an odd time right now. It is good though. It is good that pretty much anyone with a camera can make a movie, because that makes movies more like paintings now. An artist can just be an artist, which is great. I'm fully behind that. But I think the reality of the business of the business side of things, it's very, very important that you realize that in order to cut through all that noise, you need to be pretty savvy on a business and marketing level. So it's such a big question. I feel like I'm starting to ramble now.
No. I mean, I think you made some points that I think people, they think about, Justin, especially when you mentioned about the opportunity that's there, but also, of course, what people do think about also about the oversaturation, right? So I guess what I think is so interesting, though, about those 2 points in particular that you just made is that when I think back about Clapboard Jungle is the idea of being able to find an audience for what you do and loving the process. So I have to ask you then, with that being said, what you just mentioned about that, what keeps you loving the process? Because it's very obvious throughout not only the doc, but even through this conversation, that you love what you do. So what is it that keeps that love alive for you?
I don't know if I can quantify that necessarily, because it's just at a certain point in my life, and I'm sure musicians and poets and writers and stuff, they have a similar feeling. Despite days of imposter syndrome and doubt, they don't think they could do anything else because this is what they feel is their calling. And to me, that's kind of where I come from with film too. If I'm sitting in an apartment right now on a phone staring at a video collection that's massive because I don't just make movies. I love watching them. I love absorbing them. I've been collecting them since I was a wee kid. I try and see anything I can. I'm a film programmer too for film festivals because I just like anything that can involve me in the process of film in any level. You know, I run a post-production company, so I'm able to service other people's films.
Right.
You know, if there's specific stuff I do, I make sure everything that makes me money is somewhat involved with the film industry, because at least then I'm close to the thing that I love. So I can't really quantify why I love it. It just happened to be the thing that most called to me, and over time I grew to like the ups and the downs equally. I mean, obviously, in the moment when there's a failure, or somebody says no, or you get rejected, or you spend way too long trying to develop a movie, years of your life, that doesn't ultimately pay off, that stuff can be soul crushing. But ultimately, the journey to get there, the actual creation of the art, the actual being on a set and making something, or writing an idea, or seeing something that came out of your head up on the big screen a little while later after you've dreamed about what this thing would be, and maybe it's not identical to what was in your head initially, but it's still, it's still there. It's still something you made. It's still, to your mind, pretty good. That payoff of generating something from nothing, an idea, just from an idea, and making that a reality, is a very cathartic process. And it's just how I'm wired, I think. And I think anybody who's an artist who's really, really involved in making art, whatever they're, you with your radio show, I'm sure you love doing what you do. All of that comes from a point within yourself that you get personal satisfaction and fulfillment from the pursuit of that thing. Whether or not you reach your ultimate dream, I feel doesn't necessarily matter as much as you getting that enjoyment out of the process of reaching your dream. It's that Conrad thing, the journey is more important than the destination. And I firmly believe that in life about a lot of things.
I think it's a great point. I think it's a great reminder, too, for all of us when it comes to why we do what we do and the passion that we have for it. I want to say for those who are just tuning in, either on the radio side or online, you're listening to Conversations Live. Justin McConnell is our guest. He's a filmmaker and director. His new project is called CLAPBOARD Jungle. I got a chance to watch it through Amazon Video. You guys can watch it there as well as through the other digital platforms. We're about to let you also know how to stay connected with Justin. Justin, you mentioned something that I actually did not know, and that was that this is only the beginning of this. So what should our audience be on the lookout for? I know the film's out now, but what else should they be looking out for when it comes to the interviews that you've done?
Well, Arrow Video has picked it up for a bunch of territories. So in April, they're putting it out on a big special edition Blu-ray. I think I added up all if you watched everything on the disc with all the commentary tracks, I think it'll take you something like 24 hours. There's tons and tons and tons and tons of extended interviews, and I can't get into specifics because they haven't announced them yet, but we brought in some guests to do commentary tracks, and it should be a nice little, especially for aspiring filmmakers, a nice thing to have on their shelf as like a sort of a film school in a box kind of release. That's in April, and that'll also be hitting the Arrow Video channel in a bunch of territories, including the United States, in April as well, on April 19th. So you'll be able to stream it if you're on that streaming platform. And then later in the year, I'm not 100% sure which date yet because we're still in post-production. We have an 8-episode educational series coming out, which is every episode's a topic. The first episode being, the history and where we're at. The second episode being development and financing, and so on and so on and so on. And that's much more of a deep dive for people who are more interested in the intricacies of the business, in a much more focused level than the film, because the film itself is more emotional and experiential, and it's more about the why than the how. So, yeah, there's quite a bit coming in this year. It's just we shot like 350 hours of raw footage, so the post-production has been very slow on this project.
Wow. Well, it gives us something to look forward to, and I'm excited we had a chance to speak with you, Justin. So let our audience know, where can they go to be able to stay connected with the updates? I mentioned, of course, where they can watch CLAPBOARD Jungle now, but go ahead and let them know how to stay connected with you and the updates.
Sure. CLAPBOARDJungle.com should be relatively up to date. And from that, that will link you to the Facebook and Twitters, which are even more up to date. The Facebook and Twitter accounts which are even more up to date. And you can find me on social media relatively easily. I'm on every platform but TikTok, because I don't understand it yet. But I think you can find me on almost everything else. I'm not on the obvious right-wing platforms, but I definitely am on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at least, and LinkedIn, but I don't check it, so don't message me there because I probably won't see it.
That is good to know. Well, Justin, congratulations to you again. Really enjoyed the film, enjoyed the conversation, and looking forward to having you back again.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on the show.
Glad to do it. And we thank your audience for tuning in to another great segment of Conversations Live. Until next time, I'm your host, Cyrus Webb, saying as always, enjoy your day, enjoy your life, enjoy your world. Thank you all for choosing Conversations Live. Now let's go make today amazing. Take care.